folks, are you still with us? 1958, 1959, 1960, 1961, 1962. Now we're up to 1962, aren't we? And 1963, 1964, 1965. Let's do that episode. I seem to be more interested in searching for God than I was searching for a TV station or an advertiser to sponsor the TV show. And I became affiliated with the Asbury, Delaware Methodist Church on fashionable Delaware Avenue, about 8 blocks from the center of Big Buffalo. And Nancy Crosby was the secretary, and I went to that church, and I gave myself to it and volunteered to do anything I could for that church. And that was the year that somebody put 2 bullets through the handsome head of Jack Kennedy. Well, in Buffalo, there was the west side, which was Italian, and there was the east side, which was all African American. The school that they went to was on the west side, so that the African American side had to cross fashionable Delaware Avenue to go to the school. And in doing so, they passed through the church. And some little forlorn children would come into the church and ask for help. There started a church school. Nancy Crosby and Glendora ran a church school. The children were endearing, and they did comical things. And it was quite a fulfillment. It wasn't TV, but it was a fulfillment. Oh, I was going to tell you some jokes. What did the judge say to the dentist? Do you swear to pull the tooth, the whole tooth, and nothing but the tooth? And one woman said to another, what do you think of red china? And the other woman said, it's okay if it doesn't clash with the tablecloth. And let's see, what was the other joke, hon?
Man married 35 years.
Oh, thank you. A young man wrote home to his dad from college, and he said, Dad, I joined the drama club. I already have a part in the play. I'm playing the part of a man who was married for 35 years. And his dad wrote back to him, well, good son, I hope in your next drama you get a speaking part. These children were low-income families on both sides of the avenue, and Glendora would go Sunday morning and pick up a car full of them and take them to Sunday school. They were pretty much unchurched, and this was good, you know. We got about 8 or 10 children to Sunday school and teach them the great things about the world and how to live in it. And you know how to do that, don't you? And then, do you have some prompts for me?
Gypsum?
Oh, the church was next to National Gypsum. And the church rented National Gypsum their parking lot during the week. Okay, honey, keep going with the prompts.
Elegance of 355.
Oh, this beautiful house that we rented, an apartment in this beautiful house. It was stone. Great big hunks of stone. one stone piled upon another. Most beautiful stone. And this apartment was so elegant. It had an iron door, it had a glass door with an iron frame, a grate. And as you went into it, the carpets were this thick, and here was this winding staircase that went up to a hall with a great balustrade, and our apartment was to the left, and Helen's old apartment was to the right. And there were all these stained glass windows, and this hallway had a turret. It had a tower. Oh, it was beautiful. Prompt, please.
Jim Landis.
I'm prompting the prompter. I'm prompting the prompter.
Jim Landis and Don Palmer.
Jim Landis took care of the 1950 Dodge. And the 1950 Dodge was a very interesting car. It came out at a time of transition when cars were coming out with the shift under the steering wheel instead of the shift on the floor. And people weren't quite sure about that. And they really didn't trust it. They didn't think it would work. So Dodge came out with a torque converter, a car that had both a torque converter and a hand shift. So people had both. And you could drive that car from here to California and drive, or you could shift it. Isn't that an interesting thing? And then we bought a 1956 Dodge, and that year, the 1956 Dodge came out with a push-button shift. Over here, here's the steering wheel, here's the dashboard, and here's 4 buttons. And they were the shifts. The first, the second, the third, and the reverse. And that was a beautiful car. It was maroon and black, and we will show you a picture of that. That's better than my describing it. Prompt.
Don Palmer.
Oh, and Don Palmer and Nick Palmer. He was an architect, and Don Palmer worked for an advertising agency. They came from Fredonia, and they had to come to Buffalo to find jobs. Prompt the prompter.
Imposter at church.
This man came into the church one day, and he said he didn't know where he was, and he had a car, and he couldn't find his car. I never could figure him out, and we gave him something to eat, and we let him stay in the church, and when it came time to close the church, he didn't have a place to sleep. So I brought him home, and poor Franklin had to put up with that, and we let him sleep in our apartment on the living room couch. In the morning, I made him breakfast, but he didn't eat the breakfast, and then Franklin and I drove him. Franklin drove to work, and we drove him downtown, and we let him out of, and he was acting sleepy. He was acting strange. And we drove him down to right in the center of Great Big Buffalo. And then I watched him after we let him out of the car, and he all of a sudden overcame that sleepiness, and he all of a sudden bolted toward a direction which he knew he was going in. I think that we were fooled, don't you? Oh, and Franklin reached into his wallet in his chest pocket and took out $20 and gave him. I think we were deceived, don't you?
Franklin's brother.
Franklin's brother Morris died in New Orleans. Morris was very interested. He came out in the era when ships had the uh, the Morse code, and he knew the Morse code, and he went to work for the United Fruit Company, which of course drove his ships all over America getting bananas. Next, honey.
Franklin's poetry.
Oh, Franklin was very good with words. He was very, very articulate, and he knew words and he knew their meanings, and he would put them together in beautiful sentences, and it was like poetry. So it didn't seem to me that that talent should go undeveloped, and so I asked him to get up a half an hour early every morning and sit up in bed and write a poem. Well, he did, and he wrote the most beautiful poems. And the Buffalo Evening News had a column for the reporters to contribute. If the reporters saw anything that they thought was interesting, or if they had any artistic ability, they could write in the reporter's column, and it was called Olaf Fubb, which was Buffalo spelled backwards. Well, he started submitting his poems, and the newspaper started liking them, and he would have a poem in there every week. Let me give you an example. In January in Buffalo, Franklin and I, being new citizens of Buffalo, were amazed that there was a thunderstorm. Thunder, lightning, in January? True enough. And so he wrote a poem and he called it White Thunder.
Rescue cats.
Rescuing cats. There again, helping dogs and rescuing cats. Nancy was very good at rescuing cats and was very brave about it. I don't know how she did it, but a lot of time was spent rescuing cats and dogs.
Sally.
I went to Maine. My mother went back to Maine from Schenectady, and I went back there, and she had a cat, and she wasn't sure she wanted the cat. So I went up to Maine, and I visited my mother and my brother and his wife and his daughter and his son. And I brought the cat back to make sure the cat had a happy home, and that was Sally Cat.
Pigeons.
What, dear?
Pigeons.
There were so many pigeons around that church. They lived in the church, didn't they? Or outside the church, like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. They lived around that church, and they were always out there. And of course, I couldn't resist feeding them. And one of them couldn't move, couldn't fly, and I brought the pigeon home, and I tried to nurse the pigeon back to health, but then I called the pigeon Walter Pigeon. Do you remember Walter Pigeon? And the pigeon just died.
Roswell Park.
Now, we were very, very near Roswell Park. Remember the Cancer Institute?
Okay. Susan Canfield.
Susan Canfield was an ardent fan of the TV show in Schenectady. She really was. And she wrote to me after I left Schenectady and went to Buffalo. So I invited her to come up to Buffalo and stay overnight a couple of nights. And this is interesting. About 20 years later than that, I met another person named Susan Canfield in up around Albany.
Dentist neighbor.
Yeah, no, Buffalo, the University of Buffalo. It was called UB, or BU rather, UB. It was called BU, Buffalo University, and it was a private college. But then Rockefeller came around and made these great big state universities, and he made BU into the State University of New York at Buffalo, SUNY AB. And now they have something like 250,000 students.
Did you have a dentist as a neighbor?
Yes. And these people would go to the UB, now the University of Buffalo, University of New York at Buffalo, and they would become dentists, or they would become doctors, and they had this habit of buying beautiful homes and having their medical office in the front of the home, and they would live in the back. And that was all over Buffalo, up and down Linwood Avenue. That was an interesting thing about Buffalo. And so the neighbor was a dentist, a neighbor over here was a dentist, a neighbor up the street was a dentist. The next door neighbor was a doctor.
Kleinhans?
Kleinhans Music Hall, the Buffalo Symphony, the Buffalo Philharmonic. I called them the Buffalo Phils. They were magnificent. And one time Franklin was asked to do the musical review of the Buffalo Phils. And that was interesting to watch Franklin observe and then have to write the critique. And by the way, the Buffalo Evening News music critic lived in the same apartment house that we did.
Glendora classical music?
Yes, I like classical music. Yeah. I like Brahms, I like Beethoven, I like Tchaikovsky.
Friends were customers.
Most of my friends, nobody important. Well, they were important, but nobody famous, nobody with a big name. The only friends I had were the customers, like Jim Landis, who took care of the car, and like the postman and the people at church. That was the social level.
In Ralph's business?
Oh, Ralph, my brother Ralph, Arnold Folsom Jr., had a business called Progressive Foods. He was a distributor of peanut butter and jams, and he bought the foods and then he sold them. He was a distributor, and he did very, very well in that business. And he became a director on the board of Hannaford's Food. You know, Hannaford's Food is associated in Maine. Is Scarborough? Is it Scarborough?
Gordon singing?
Repeat, dear.
Gordon singing?
And Gordon wanted to be a singer. He wanted so much to be a singer of country songs, and he would buy these instruments recordings where you could sing along with the orchestra. There wasn't another soloist, and he would, he did this so much that his voice changed. I called him up one day and I said, I'd like to speak to Gordon Folsom, because it was an all different voice. And he says, this is Gordon Folsom. He also worked for my brother as a salesman for the foods.
Helene, Asheville?
And Helene and Roger. Roger became vice president of the Northern National Bank. And I was surprised that being such indigenous Maine natives up in Aroostook County, 18 miles from the Canadian border, I was surprised that they would forsake Maine. But when it came time for retirement, they went to Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah, looking for what I have now.
I was searching, and total failure. for God. And the thing that I was searching for is something that I have now. I'm waiting for the prompter.
Okay, did you want to talk more about the beginning, about pack up and 60 and 300 sad miles?
No.
Okay.
I went to see Merle Galusha the day that I was told I didn't have a TV show any longer. I went to see him to get an explanation, but he gave me the dodge. He wouldn't see me, and his secretary covered up for him. And later, Merle Galusha was killed in an airplane crash.
And did you want to talk more about Franklin in the newspaper?
Franklin was becoming very popular and very well known. He had bylines and he was very well liked. And he received letter after letter about the good stories that he wrote. He had a sensitivity, and he would write about these people, and he would feel for them. And then they would write letters to him or to the newspaper about how relieved they were to have a reporter who told the story the way it should have been told, to tell the story that the people wanted told.
Peace Park?
Oh, in Buffalo, right by the Peace Bridge, well, there's a park, a beautiful little park, and I used to go down there. And there was a hot dog stand there. And I wouldn't eat the hot dog because I was vegetarian. But that was a beautiful park. If you go to Buffalo, go to that park, right on the Niagara River.
No TV set?
I didn't have a TV set. I didn't watch TV. Even though I had time, I didn't watch TV. Even though I was the greatest of TV fans.
And synonyms.
I got interested in the Webster's Collegiate Book of Synonyms. Such a great book published by G.C. Merriam. Oh, you should have that book. It gives you the meaning of the words, how one word in the English language is just a shade different from another word. They're all synonyms, but they have just a shade different, and it tells you how expressive and articulate the English language is.
Okay, so what year are we up to now?
Well, thank you, prompter. Yeah. We're doing the years 1978, 1979, we're doing the years 1958, 1959, 1960, 1961, and 1962.
Okay, so this is all ending in 62. Okay.
Yes. Do you have any other jokes that we could tell the people?
Feather in your cap?
Oh, a young man went to California to seek his fortune, and he wrote home to his dad, "Dad, I got a job. That's a feather in my cap." So a little while later, he wrote home, and he says, "Dad, I got a promotion. That's a feather in my cap." A little while later, he wrote home, and he says, "Dad, I got a raise. That's a feather in my cap." It came Christmas time, and he wanted to go home for Christmas, and he wrote to his dad and sent me the money to go home for Christmas. Dad says, "Take some of those feathers and fly home."
Brainwash.
Brainwash. I guess that's how you get a clean mind, isn't it? If you want a clean mind, you get brainwash.
And time will tell.
Never tell a secret in front of a clock. Can you tell me why, prompter?
Why?
Time will tell.
Ha ha. Okay, that's all I've got.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, let me know if there's anything that we can do for you, and let me know if this story this account, this documentary, this biography helps you in any way. And I'll tell you how I kept on with the seeking. And that's sort of suspense. Grace and peace.